My parents claimed my brother bought his Mercedes with investment money while I drove a rusted wreck. But when Grandpa asked why I wasn't driving the gift he sent me, the room froze. That silence cost them their entire inheritance. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The rain wasn't just falling. It was hammering against the windshield of my 2008 Corolla with a violence that felt personal. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned the color of old parchment, praying to whatever mechanical gods existed that the engine light flickering on the dashboard was just a glitch. It was. The car shuddered, let out a wheezing cough that sounded alarmingly like a dying animal, and then the power steering vanished. I wrestled the vehicle to the side of the muddy shoulder, just a mile away from my parents' pristine driveway. I sat there for a moment in the sudden silence, listening to the rain ping against the metal, and rested my forehead against the cold steering wheel. "Please," I whispered to the empty car, "just one more night, just get me to the dinner." I was 26 years old. I had a master's degree in education. I worked 50 hours a week teaching high school chemistry to teenagers who cared more about TikTok than the periodic table. And yet, I couldn't afford to fix the alternator on a car that was old enough to be one of my students. I had to walk the last mile. By the time I arrived at the front door of my parents' sprawling colonial-style house, I looked like a drowned rat. My cheap heels were caked in mud, my hair was plastered to my skull, and I was shivering uncontrollably. I didn't even have to knock. The door swung open, and there stood my mother, Deborah. She wasn't looking at my freezing, trembling form with concern. She was looking at the mud on the porch with horror. "Elena," she hissed, checking over her shoulder. "Good Lord, look at you. Did you walk? Where is your car?" "It died," I said through chattering teeth. "A mile back. I think the alternator finally gave up." "Well, don't stand there dripping on the hardwood," she snapped, ushering me in and immediately handing me a rag from the utility closet, as if I were a muddy dog. "Go dry off in the laundry room. Grandpa Arthur is already seated, and you know how he gets about punctuality." I cleaned myself up as best I could. When I finally walked into the dining room, the warmth of the fire and the smell of roast beef hit me, but it didn't comfort me. It just highlighted the divide. My father, Richard, was pouring wine. My brother, Lucas, was already eating a bread roll, looking distinctively dry and well-rested. And at the head of the table sat Grandpa Arthur. Arthur was a man carved from granite. He was 78, retired from a career in corporate contract law, and possessed a gaze that could peel the paint off a wall. He lived in Connecticut and rarely traveled down to see us, making this dinner a momentous occasion. "Elena," Grandpa Arthur boomed, his voice deep and gravelly. "You're late." "Car trouble, Grandpa," I said, sliding into my seat and trying to hide my muddy ankles under the table. My Corolla finally kicked the bucket on the highway. The room went strangely quiet. My father cleared his throat loudly. "Yes, well, these things happen with old machines. Have some wine, Arthur." But Grandpa didn't reach for his wine. He set his fork down slowly. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing beneath his bushy gray brows. He looked confused, which was an expression I had never seen on him before. "Your Corolla," he repeated. "Yes," I said, reaching for a bread roll since I hadn't eaten since breakfast. "It's got 200,000 miles on it, but it tries its best." Grandpa frowned. He shifted his gaze from me to the window, where the driveway was visible under the floodlights. Parked right in the center, gleaming even in the rain, was a brand-new silver Mercedes C-Class. "Then who," Grandpa asked slowly, pointing a thick finger toward the window, "is driving the Mercedes?" Lucas, my 23-year-old brother, puffed out his chest. "That's mine, Grandpa. A beauty, isn't she? Handles like a dream." Grandpa looked at Lucas. Then he looked at my parents, who were suddenly very interested in their salads. Finally, he looked back at me. "Elena," Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. "Where is the Mercedes I gave you?" I froze, the bread roll halfway to my mouth. I blinked. "I'm sorry." "The graduation gift," Grandpa said, enunciating every word. "For your master's degree. I sent the check to your father 2 years ago. It was specifically earmarked for a new vehicle for you, so you wouldn't be driving that death trap to the school every day." I looked at my father. He was sweating. I looked at my mother. She was gripping her napkin so tight her knuckles were white. "Wait," I said, my voice barely a whisper, the realization hitting me harder than the cold rain had. You gave me that car." "My parents gave that car to my brother," I said, my voice rising as the pieces clicked into place. "They told me he bought it with his crypto investments." Grandpa went quiet. He didn't yell. He didn't slam the table. He just went absolutely still. He looked at my father, then at my mother, and finally rested his gaze on Lucas, who was suddenly looking much less arrogant. The look on his face told me something was about to go down. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of my dead car. It was a physical blow that knocked the wind out of me. For 10 seconds, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the drumming of rain against the window pane. My father, Richard, was the first to break the silence. He let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh that sounded like a hiccup. "Now, Arthur, let's not get into logistics over dinner," Dad said, reaching for the wine bottle again, though his hand was shaking so badly the neck of the bottle chattered against the glass rim. "We can discuss the finances later. It was a family decision." "A family decision," Grandpa repeated. His voice was devoid of warmth. "I see. Was Elena part of this family decision?" "I didn't know anything about it," I blurted out, my shock rapidly curdling into anger. "I've been paying $600 a month in repairs for a car that doesn't have air conditioning. I missed 3 days of work last winter because it wouldn't start." "Elena, lower your voice," my mother snapped, her eyes darting daggers at me. "Don't be dramatic. You know Lucas needed a reliable car for his networking." "Networking?" I asked, incredulous. "Mom, he plays video games until 4:00 a.m. He doesn't have a job." "I'm an entrepreneur," Lucas shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You wouldn't understand, you're just a teacher. You don't need a Mercedes to drive to a public high school. It would send the wrong message to the students anyway. It's better for your image to be humble." I stared at him. The audacity was so thick I could almost taste it. "My image? Lucas, I have to tape my side mirror on with duct tape." "Enough," Grandpa said. It wasn't a shout, it was a command. He picked up his napkin, dabbed his mouth, and placed it neatly on the table. "Richard, Deborah, you told me specifically in our phone call last Christmas that Elena was, quote, thrilled with the car and that she takes great care of it. You told me she was too busy to write a thank you note herself, so you passed along her gratitude." My face burned. I hadn't written a thank you note because I didn't know the gift existed. I had sent him a card for a sweater he'd sent, thinking that was it. We didn't want to worry you," Mom stammered, trying to adopt a pitiful tone. "Elena is not a confident driver, Arthur. That car is a lot of power. We thought it was safer for Lucas to handle the heavy machinery, and Elena is so comfortable in her Corolla. It's sentimental to her." "Sentimental," I choked out. "I hate that car, it smells like mildew." "We were protecting her," Dad added, latching onto Mom's excuse. "And Lucas needed a boost. He's had a hard time launching his career. We thought, as a family, we share resources." "You stole from your daughter," Grandpa corrected. He didn't look at them. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. He opened it, put on his reading glasses, and uncapped a fountain pen. My parents watched that notebook with terrified fascination. They knew, as I did, that Grandpa Arthur was a man of records. He documented everything. Every transaction, every promise, every conversation. "Date, August 14th, 2 years ago," Grandpa read aloud, his voice steady. "Wire transfer, $55,000. Memo, Elena's graduation gift. Phone call with Deborah, September 2nd. Confirmed Elena received the vehicle and loves the heated seats. He looked up over his glasses. You lied to me, repeatedly, for 2 years. Dad, please, my mother whispered, her eyes tearing up in a performance I had seen 1,000 times. We're under so much pressure. The mortgage, the club fees. Lucas needed a win. Elena is strong. She can handle hardship. Lucas is sensitive. Grandpa closed the notebook with a snap that echoed like a gunshot. Elena, he said, turning to me, finish your dinner. Then I want you to drive me to my hotel. I'm not staying here tonight. But Arthur, Dad stood up, we have the guest room prepared. I will not sleep under a roof held up by lies, Grandpa said. Elena. I can't, I said, my voice trembling. My car is dead, remember. Grandpa looked at Lucas. Give her the keys. Lucas log. It was a nervous, disbelief-laden laugh. What? No, Grandpa, come on, it's my car. It's registered in Dad's name, actually. Give her the keys, Grandpa said. It's okay, Grandpa, I said quickly, seeing the veins bulging in my father's neck. I didn't want a fist fight, I just wanted to get out of there. I'll call a cab, I'll take you to the hotel. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. The betrayal was settling in now, heavy and cold in my stomach. It wasn't just about the car. It was the fact that they had watched me struggle. They had watched me count pennies for gas. They had watched me cry when my radiator blew up last summer. And all the while, Lucas was cruising around in my gift, bought with money intended for me, and they had laughed about it. They had forgotten one crucial thing, though. Grandpa wasn't just a rich relative they could milk. He was the trustee of the family estate. And while my parents thought they were managing him, they had no idea that the senile old man, act they thought he was playing, was just him giving them enough rope to hang themselves. As I walked toward the door to call the Uber, I heard my mother hissing at my father. Fix this, Richard. If he changes the will, we are ruined. I didn't look back, but I knew the war had just begun. The Uber ride to the hotel was quiet. Grandpa paid for the premium ride, a black SUV that smelled like leather and mints, and sat in the back with me, staring out the window at the rain-slicked streets. I felt a profound sense of shame, which was irrational, but that's what growing up in my house did to you. You felt guilty for being the victim. I'm sorry, Grandpa, I said softly. I didn't want to cause a scene. You didn't cause it, Elena, he said, patting my hand with his rough palm. You simply revealed it. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the dynamic of my childhood. I was the worker. Lucas was the star. I was the one who got straight A's, not because I was a genius, but because I studied until my eyes burned. I worked at a diner on weekends starting at age 16 to save for college. My parents applauded me, sure, but they never helped. It builds character, my father would say as he watched me head out for a double shift. We don't want to hand you everything. You need to learn the value of $1. Meanwhile, Lucas was special. If he got a C-, they threw a party because he's really turning it around. If he wanted to join a travel hockey team, the check was written before he finished the sentence. When he crashed his first car at 17 because he was texting, they bought him a newer one the next week because he was traumatized by the accident. I had accepted this. I thought this was just how it was. I thought my parents were cash poor, but trying their best, and that Lucas just had higher needs than I did. I never realized they were actively intercepting my blessings to feed his entitlement. Tell me about the antagonist, Grandpa said suddenly. Who? Your brother and your parents, he clarified. What else do they have? I sighed. Lucas has the downstairs suite. They renovated the basement for him last year. Granite kitchenette, home theater, private entrance. Mom says it's his incubator for his business ideas. And what are these business ideas? Reselling sneakers, I said flatly. And day trading with money Dad gives him. He lost $10,000 last month, and Dad told me they had to cut back on groceries because of market volatility. I brought them 3 bags of groceries from my own paycheck because I thought they were starving. Grandpa's jaw tightened. You bought them groceries? Yes, Mom called me crying, saying they were eating rice and beans. Deborah was wearing a Cartier watch tonight, Grandpa noted coldly. And Richard just leased a new Land Rover. I saw it in the garage. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen the garage. They told me that was a loaner. It's not a loaner, Grandpa said. We arrived at the hotel. It was the nicest one in the city. Grandpa didn't get out immediately. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the hotel entrance lights. Elena, your parents are not just bad with money. They are predators, and they have been feeding on your empathy. He pulled out his phone. I need you to go home to your apartment. Do not call them. Do not answer their texts. Tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m., I want you to meet me at the law offices of Henderson and Waite. Henderson and Waite? I asked. That's the most expensive firm in the city. Yes, Grandpa said. I've retained them. Because we aren't just getting your car back, Elena. We are going to audit the last 10 years of my financial contributions to this family. He opened the door, then paused. One more thing, that Mercedes, it's registered to your father, correct? That's what Lucas said. Good, Grandpa smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was a SH. Arc's smile. That makes it an asset I can legally seize since the funds were misappropriated from a trust. But your parents have a bigger problem. The house. The house? I own the house, Grandpa said simply. I let them live there rent-free for 20 years on the condition that they maintain it and, crucially, that they support their children equally. It's in the deed. He stepped out into the rain, unfurling an umbrella with a snap. Go home, Elena, get some sleep. Tomorrow we go to war. I watched him walk into the lobby, his back straight, his cane tapping rhythmically on the marble. I looked down at my phone. I had 42 missed calls from Mom and 12 from Lucas. I powered off the phone. The waiting room of Henderson and Waite was quieter than a library and smelled of old money, leather, mahogany, and the faint, crisp scent of fresh currency. I sat on a Chesterfield sofa that probably cost more than my entire year's salary, clutching a cup of coffee that a paralegal had brought me in a bone china cup. My hands were still shaking, but not from the cold anymore. It was the adrenaline. Grandpa Arthur emerged from the double oak doors at exactly 9:00 a.m., flanked by a man who looked like he ate sharks for breakfast. This was Mr. Henderson. He wore a suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life and had eyes that were devoid of any human sympathy. Elena, Grandpa said, his voice softer than it had been the night before. Come in. We sat around a conference table that seemed to stretch for miles. Mr. Henderson placed a single, thick file folder in front of me. It was labeled Beneficiary Disbursements, Elena Marie Vance. Before we begin, Mr. Henderson said, his voice dry and precise, I need to verify your identity and your current assets. Your grandfather has raised concerns that funds distributed to your parents as your custodians and later as your proxies never reached you. Proxies? I asked, my brow furrowing. I never appointed them as my proxies. Mr. Henderson exchanged a look with Grandpa. He slid a document across the table. It was a power of attorney form dated 3 years ago. It had my signature at the bottom. I stared at it. The loop of the E was too wide. The O was too sharp. That's not my signature, I whispered. I didn't sign this. We suspected as much, Grandpa said grimly. Elena, I need you to brace yourself. The Mercedes was just the tip of the iceberg. It was the clumsy mistake that unraveled a very sophisticated tapestry of lies. Mr. Henderson opened the file. According to our records, based on requests filed by your mother, Deborah Vance, your grandfather has paid for the following in the last 5 years. A $40,000 wedding venue deposit for your nuptials to a Mr. James Sterling. I'm single, I said, my voice rising. I've never been engaged. Who is James Sterling? We believe he is a fabrication. Henderson continued without pausing. He also paid $15,000 for emergency reconstructive dental surgery after a supposed car accident you had in 2021. I opened my mouth, showing my teeth. I've never had a cavity, let alone surgery. And, Henderson said, delivering the final blow, $25,000 specifically requested for mental health residential treatment due to your severe nervous breakdown last summer. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. They told you I was in a mental institution. They told me you were fragile, Grandpa said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. They said you couldn't handle direct contact, that you were ashamed. That's why I didn't call. They told me you needed space to heal. I sent checks. I wrote letters that I assume were burned. I thought I was supporting your recovery. I thought back to last summer. I had been working double shifts at a summer school program to pay off my student loans. My parents had told me Grandpa was traveling in Europe and couldn't be reached. Where did the money go? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mr. Henderson projected a spreadsheet onto the wall monitor. It showed the flow of funds. The wedding money coincided perfectly with the renovation of Lucas's basement suite. The dental money appeared 2 days before Lucas's Instagram showed him vacationing in Cabo San Lucas with his friends. The mental health money was a direct transfer to cover a margin call on my father's day trading account. I wasn't just a daughter to them. I was a ghost project, a fictitious invalid they used to siphon money from a man who loved me. This is fraud, I said, the realization hardening something soft inside me. This is actual crimes. It is, Grandpa said, and because they used the mail and wire transfers to do it, it falls under federal jurisdiction. But Elena, you hold the key. I can cut them off, but to prosecute or to recover the assets like the house, I need you to testify that these are. Equests were false. I looked at the ledger. I looked at the mental health claim. That was the one that broke me. They had used my sanity, my reputation, as a currency. I'll do whatever you need, I said. I'm done protecting them. Good, Grandpa said. He pushed a button on the intercom. Lock the accounts, Henderson, and serve the eviction notice. I didn't go back to school that day. I couldn't face a classroom of teenagers when my own life felt like a dark, twisted YA novel. Instead, I went back to my apartment, a third-floor walk-up with peeling paint and a radiator that clanked like a dying night. I needed to change out of my borrowed clothes and process the magnitude of the theft. I walked up the stairs, my mind racing with legal terms and dollar figures. When I reached my door, I found it unlocked. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pushed the door open. My mother was sitting on my thrift store couch. My father was pacing the small kitchenette. Lucas was leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. Where have you been? Mom demanded, jumping up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup was perfect. We've been calling you for 12 hours. Do you have any idea how worried we were? Worried? I dropped my keys on the counter. Or worried that I was talking to Grandpa. Don't take that tone with me, Dad snapped. He looked haggard. He hadn't shaved, and he smelled faintly of scotch. You caused a disaster last night, Elena. A disaster. Grandpa Arthur is confused. He's old. He gets things mixed up. He seemed pretty sharp this morning, I said, leaning against the counter and crossing my arms. Especially when he was showing me the wire transfer for my reconstructive dental surgery. The silence that followed was absolute. Lucas looked up from his phone. What surgery? Shut up, Lucas, Dad hissed. He turned to me, putting on a smile that was meant to be reassuring but looked predatory. Elena, honey, listen. You don't understand the context. We were managing the family cash flow. We borrowed against your future inheritance. It was all going to be paid back, with interest. With interest? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. Like the money for my wedding to the imaginary James Sterling, was that an investment too? Mom flinched. She walked toward me, hands outspread. We needed that money for the house, Elena, for the family, your brother. He has so much potential, but the world is so hard on young men these days. We just needed to give him a runway. We knew you were fine, you're steady, you're a survivor, you've always been the strong one." "I'm the strong one because you made me carry the weight," I said, my voice shaking. "You turned me into a mental patient to pay for Dad's bad stock trades. You made me a charity case so Lucas could go to Cabo." "It wasn't Cabo," Lucas shouted, defensive now. "It was a networking retreat." "It was a party, Lucas," I screamed, finally losing my composure. "I saw the pictures. You were holding a bottle of tequila in every single one." "You're jealous," Mom spat, her mask slipping. "You've always been jealous of him. That's what this is about. You poisoned your grandfather against us because you can't stand to see your brother succeed." "Succeed at what?" I asked. "Spending my money." "It's not your money," Dad roared, slamming his hand on my tiny dining table. "It's family money. It comes from my father. It belongs to us." "Actually," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm, "Grandpa Arthur thinks differently. And since he owns the house you're living in, and the car Lucas is driving, and the accounts you've been draining, I think his opinion matters." "He won't do anything," Mom scoffed, though she looked terrified. "He cares too much about the family name. He won't let us starve." "He's not going to let you starve," I said, "but he is going to let you work. Henderson frozen the accounts an hour ago, and the eviction notice is being couriered to the house as we speak." Mom's face went gray. She collapsed back onto the sofa. "Eviction? He can't. We have squatters' rights. We have rights." "You have a lease agreement that explicitly states tenancy is conditional on ethical conduct," I recited, remembering what Henderson had read. "Fraud isn't ethical, Mom." Dad stared at me with pure hatred. "If you don't fix this, Elena, if you don't call him right now and tell him you were mistaken, you are dead to us. Do you hear me? We will cut you off." I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the greed, the entitlement, the absolute lack of love. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an accomplice. "Get out," I said. "Elena." "Get out," I grabbed my phone. "Or I'm calling the police and reporting intruders. And since I'm the only one on this lease, they will remove you." They left, but as Lucas walked past me, he shoulder-checked me hard enough to make me stumble. "You're going to pay for this," he muttered. "You ruined everything." "No, Lucas," I said to his back. "I just stopped paying for you." If I thought the confrontation at my apartment was the end of it, I was naive. It was just the opening skirmish. Over the next 3 days, the war escalated. Grandpa stayed in town, setting up a command center in the hotel suite. I spent my evenings there, helping him and Mr. Henderson sort through boxes of financial records my parents had been forced to surrender under threat of immediate prosecution. The sheer scale of the deception was nauseating. It wasn't just the big-ticket items. It was the daily siphoning. They had opened credit cards in my name when I was 18, cards I never knew about, and maxed them out, then paid the minimums with Grandpa's money to keep my credit score just high enough to avoid alerts, but low enough that I struggled to get my own apartment. "They were farming you," Grandpa said one night, throwing a stack of statements onto the coffee table. He looked 10 years older than he had a few days ago. "They were keeping you financially paralyzed so you couldn't leave, while using your identity to fund their lifestyle." But my parents weren't going down without a dirty fight. On Thursday, I received a call from my school principal. "Elena," Principal Skinner said, sounding uncomfortable, "I received a disturbing email today from your father. He claims you are suffering from severe substance abuse issues and that your erratic behavior is a danger to the students." My blood ran cold. That is a lie, a complete lie. "He attached a document," the principal said, "a receipt for a residential rehab facility from last summer." They were using their own fraud to destroy me. They were using the fake paper trail they created for Grandpa to burn my career to the ground. "Principal Skinner," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, "that document is a forgery created to defraud a trust fund. I am currently working with the law firm of Henderson and Waite. I can have them send you a sworn affidavit within the hour, along with the results of a drug test I am happy to take right now. I managed to save my job, but just barely. The realization that my parents were willing to destroy my livelihood, my only source of independence, just to spite me, removed the last shred of hesitation I had. Then came the issue of the Mercedes. Grandpa had sent a tow truck to repossess the vehicle from the driveway. The driver arrived to find the driveway empty. They hid it, I told Grandpa. Lucas probably parked it at a friend's house. They are trying to liquidate assets, Henderson warned. If they sell that car for cash, we'll never see that money again, and they need cash because I've cut off the credit cards. We needed to find the car, and I knew exactly how to do it. Lucas was arrogant, but he was also predictable. He lived his life for social media. If he had the car, he wouldn't be able to resist showing it off, even if he was hiding. I created a fake Instagram account, a profile of a scout for a luxury car magazine. I followed Lucas's private account, which he accepted immediately, desperate for validation, and waited. 3 hours later, he posted a story. Hiding out at the lake house, laying low but living high, Mercedes life haters gonna hate. The lake house. It belonged to my mother's sister, Aunt Karen, who lived in Florida. They had broken in. Got him, I said, showing the phone to Grandpa. Excellent, Grandpa said, his eyes hard. But we aren't just going to take the car, Elena. We are going to expose them to the entire family. How? Sunday is your cousin's engagement party, Grandpa said. Your Aunt Karen will be there. Your parents will be there, trying to pretend everything is normal to keep up appearances. They think I'm too embarrassed by the scandal to show up. He leaned forward. We are going to go. We are going to present the evidence. And when Aunt Karen finds out they are squatting in her vacation home and hiding a stolen vehicle, the court of public opinion will do what the legal system takes months to accomplish. They'll cause a scene, I warned. I'm counting on it, Grandpa said, because when they scream, they reveal who they really are. But as the weekend approached, the texts from my mother shifted from threats to dark, manipulative guilt trips. Your father is having chest pains. If he has a heart attack, it's on your hands. We are family. Families forgive. Don't let money destroy us. Lucas is crying. He's just a boy. Why do you hate him? I stared at the messages. A week ago, they would have broken me. Now, they just looked like evidence. He's 23, Mom, I whispered to the screen, and he's driving my car. We prepared the dossier, copies of the forged signatures, the bank statements showing the transfers to Lucas's accounts, the fake rehab invoices. The engagement party was at a country club, at W. As the perfect stage, my parents relied on the silence of victims to maintain their status. They relied on me being too polite to make a fuss. But the girl who drove the rusted Corolla was gone. I was driving a rental car paid for by the trust now, and I was coming to collect. The Oakmont Country Club was the kind of place that smelled of lilies and old money. Crystal chandeliers trembled overhead, casting fractured light onto the polished dance floor where my cousin, Sarah, was swirling in a white dress, blissfully unaware that her engagement party was about to become the site of a public execution. I stood at the entrance of the ballroom, clutching my clutch bag so hard the beads dug into my palm. My heart was doing a frantic drum solo against my ribs. Breathe, Elena, Grandpa Arthur murmured beside me. He looked regal in his tuxedo, leaning on his cane not out of frailty, but like a king holding a scepter. Remember, we aren't crashing the party. We are simply correcting the record. They're going to hate me, I whispered, scanning the room. I spotted my parents near the buffet. My mother was holding court, laughing loudly, a champagne flute in her hand. Lucas was there too, looking sulky in a suit that was slightly too tight, probably bored because he couldn't play video games. They already hate you, Grandpa said, his voice hard. They hate you because you are the mirror that shows them their own ugliness. It's time to break the mirror and show everyone else what's behind it. We walked in. The effect was immediate. As we navigated through the round tables, heads turned. Grandpa Arthur was a legend in this family, the patriarch who controlled the purse strings, and his unexpected arrival was a ripple that silenced conversations. My mother spotted us. Her smile faltered, twitching at the corners, before she plastered it back on with terrifying force. She abandoned her conversation and rushed toward us, intercepting us before we could reach the head table. "Dad, Arthur," she leaned in for a kiss, which Grandpa deftly avoided by turning his head. "And, Elena, we didn't think you were coming, with your condition." She said it loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. A few relatives gave me pitying looks. The mental breakdown narrative was already in circulation. "My condition is excellent, Deborah," I said, my voice steady, though my knees were shaking. "I'm feeling incredibly clear-headed." "Well, that's good," Mom said, her eyes darting around nervously. "Why don't we go find a quiet table in the back? Dad, you look tired. The travel must have been exhausting." "I am not tired," Grandpa boomed. His voice carried, cutting through the ambient jazz music. "And I am not sitting in the back. I wish to speak to Karen." Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, was the host of the party. She was a fierce, sharp-tongued woman who had no patience for nonsense. She was currently standing near the DJ booth, adjusting a floral arrangement. "Karen is busy." Dad appeared at Mom's elbow, sweating profusely. "Arthur, please, this is Sarah's night. Let's not talk business." "Oh, we aren't talking business," Grandpa said, moving past them like an icebreaker ship through thin ice. "We are talking about real estate." He walked straight up to Aunt Karen. I followed, feeling the burning stares of my parents on my back. "Uncle Arthur," Karen beamed, hugging him. "What a surprise. And Elena, look at you, you look wonderful." "Karen," Grandpa said, keeping hold of her hand. "A quick question. Are you renting out your lake house in Florida this week?" Karen frowned, confused. "What? No, it's closed up for the season. I have the shutters down and the alarm set." "That's strange," I said, stepping forward. I pulled out my phone. I had screenshot Lucas's Instagram story before he could delete it. I held the screen up to Aunt Karen's face. "Because Lucas posted this 6 hours ago." Karen squinted at the screen. The photo showed Lucas's feet propped up on a very distinctive teak coffee table with a view of the lake in the background. The caption read, "Living the unbothered life. Lake vibes." "That's my table," Karen said, her voice dropping an octave. "And that's my view." She looked up, her eyes scanning the room until they locked on Lucas, who was stuffing a shrimp into his mouth. "He broke into my house." "It wasn't a break-in," Mom screeched, rushing over, realizing the dam was breaking. "Karen, honey, it was a misunderstanding. We thought you wouldn't mind. Lucas just needed a place to decompress. He's been under so much stress with his investments." "He broke a window to get in," Grandpa said calmly. "The security company called me because my name is still on the emergency contact list from when I financed the property for you, Karen. I told them not to call the police yet because I wanted to see if Deborah would lie about it." "You broke into my house," Karen shouted, her voice SHR. The music stopped. The DJ had sensed the vibe and cut the track. The entire ballroom went silent. "It's just a house, Karen," Dad yelled, trying to regain control. "Family helps family. We're in a bit of a transition right now." "A transition?" Grandpa turned to the room, addressing the crowd of stunned relatives and friends. "Is that what we're calling grand larceny now? Richard, tell them why you are in a transition." "Don't do this, Arthur," Dad warned, stepping forward with a clenched fist. "You're senile, you don't know what you're saying." "I know that you intercepted $55,000 intended for Elena's car," Grandpa said, his voice ringing out with courtroom clarity. "I know you forged her signature on a power of attorney document. I know you created a fake medical history for your daughter, claiming she was in a mental institution, to explain why you needed $25,000 to cover your gambling losses." A collective gasp went through the room. My cousin Sarah covered her mouth. "That's a lie," Lucas shouted, pushing his way through the crowd. She's crazy. She's making it all up because she's jealous of the Merceds. The Merceds, I said, turning to look at my brother. You mean the one you bought with the investment money from your crypto scheme, or the one Grandpa bought for me? I reached into my bag and pulled out the spare key fob. Grandpa had the dealership cut a new one when he proved ownership with the title. I believe this belongs to me, I said. Give me that, Lucas lunged for me. It happened in slow motion. My brother, the golden child, the entrepreneur, tried to physically attack me in the middle of a country club ballroom, but he never made it. Two large men in dark suits, private security Grandpa had hired, waiting in the wings, stepped out and blocked him. Lucas bounced off one of them like a rubber ball hitting a wall. Lucas, Mom screamed, rushing to cradle him as if he'd been shot. They assaulted him. Did you see that? They assaulted my baby. They stopped him from assaulting his sister, Aunt Karen said, her face cold as stone. She turned to my parents. You squatted in my house, you stole from this girl, and you ruined my daughter's engagement party. Karen, please, Mom sobbed, switching tactics to the victim card. We're broke. We have nothing. The accounts are frozen. We just wanted to survive. You have nothing because you spent it on watches and cars and vacations while your daughter drove a wreck, Grandpa said. He looked down at them with infinite disappointment. I gave you a home, Richard. I gave you an education. I gave you a monthly stipend that is more than most people earn in a year, and you consumed it all like locusts. Get out, Aunt Karen pointed to the door. Get out of my club. Get out of my house. And if I see Lucas near my property again, I will press charges for breaking and entering. You can't do this to us, Dad yelled, his face purple. We are Vances. We have standing in this community. Not anymore, I said softly. The security guards ushered them out. My mother was weeping loudly, clinging to a furious, red-faced Lucas. My father was shouting threats about lawyers. As the heavy oak doors swung shut behind them, the silence in the room was heavy. Then Sarah walked up to me. She looked at the door, then at me. Is it true, she asked, about the rehab and the money? Yes, I said, all of it. Sarah hugged me. It wasn't a polite hug, it was a fierce squeeze. I'm so sorry, Elena. We didn't know. They told us. They told us you didn't want to see anyone. I looked over her shoulder at Grandpa. He gave me a small, tired nod. The truth was out. The mirror was broken. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one cleaning up the glass. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely of their own making. Without Grandpa's financial backing, my parents' house of cards collapsed within weeks. The eviction from the family estate was executed by the sheriff's department. Neighbors reported seeing my mother trying to smuggle out the crystal chandeliers in garbage bags, but the deputies stopped her. The house, it turned out, belonged to the trust, and the trust belonged to Grandpa. Because of the fraud, specifically the wire fraud involving the fake medical invoices, Mr. Henderson, the shark-like lawyer, gave them a choice: face federal charges or sign a binding agreement to repay every cent they had stolen, with interest, garnishing whatever wages they earned for the rest of their lives. They chose the repayment plan to avoid prison. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town my mother used to make jokes about. Dad got a job in sales at a used appliance store. It was humbling work, and from what I heard, he wasn't very good at it. Lucas was the hardest hit. Without his incubator basement and his parents' funding, his entrepreneurial career evaporated. The last IH. Eared, he was working the night shift at a warehouse, loading trucks. He had tried to reach out to me once, sending a text that simply said, "You happy now?" I didn't reply. I blocked the number. As for me, I was standing in the driveway of Grandpa's Connecticut estate. The autumn leaves were turning gold and crimson, painting the world in fire. Parked in the driveway was the Merced C-Class. We had recovered it from the lake house. It had a few scratches on the bumper where Lucas had been careless, but it had been detailed and restored to perfection. Are you sure you want to keep it? Grandpa asked, standing on the porch, wrapped in a wool cardigan. We could trade it in, get something that doesn't have memories attached. I ran my hand over the silver hood. No, I want to keep it. Why? Because it wasn't Lucas's car, I said, looking up at him. It was your gift to me, and every time I drive it, I'm going to remember that I'm worth fighting for. Grandpa smiled, his eyes crinkled at the corners. You are, Elena, you always were. He handed me a thick envelope. What's this? The deed to the house, he said. The one your parents were evicted from. I'm putting it in your name. I stared at the envelope. Grandpa, I can't live in that house. It's too big, it's too, them. I know, he said. That's why I'm giving you the permission to sell it. The market is hot. The proceeds should be enough to buy you a nice place of your own, something cozy, something yours, and fund your classroom for the next 20 years. Tears pricked my eyes. I hugged him, burying my face in the scratchy wool of his sweater. He smelled of pipe tobacco and safety. Thank you, I whispered. No, he said, pulling back and holding me at arm's length. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. Lies rot a family from the inside out, Elena. You cut out the rot. I got into the car. The leather seat was warm. The engine purred to life with a quiet, confident power, so different from the wheezing cough of my old Corolla. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the driveway, watching Grandpa wave in the rearview mirror until he was just a speck. I turned onto the highway. The road ahead was open, clear, and mine.